if I had to describe the way the process was sort of constructed within me, it was a multi-year period of um, being faced with my own fear and confronting it over and over and over, um, and and seeing what it was and where it came from, what it was based upon, and what it was pointed towards. And as that I'm trying to maintain a normal life too. But eventually, it just all began to fall apart. Honestly, not only did I care less and less about things that I had been thinking I was supposed to be holding as important, but I literally felt as though my ability to function was just falling apart. And uh, and one of the most surprising things about it to me was that as my ability to function was falling apart, I couldn't even get myself to care about that. Um, and so there was this pendulum that would swing back and forth of these, moments or days or hours in which that just overwhelming beatific peace would be at hand. And I had no sense of need, no sense of want, and no sense of lack, and nothing but feeling like in perfect peace, which is a really, really easy way to then go, I just don't think I have any reason to go to the office at all right now. And that pendulum would swing back the other way in fits of just terror, honestly, panic, going, oh my God, what am I doing? My life is literally falling apart. Ah. And I don't know how to explain this to anyone.
Is that like the dark night of the soul or something?
Exactly. I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
And it was that sort of pendulum would swing, and it would. When I was on one side of the pendulum, it was so spectacularly different than being on the other side of the pendulum that it's like each one of them made the other one worse. Like, if you've felt that peace, then that panic just seems so horrifying. And if you felt that panic, it's like that peace seems so extraordinary. I mean, it's sort of like they exacerbated each other, um, and there became this. The swing between the two was so maddening that the drive to essentially resolve it became so overwhelmingly ferocious that it was sort of like this has got to stop. And it got to a point where that was so to the degree that I did not care what happened. I don't care if my career disappears. I don't care if I lose my house. I don't care if I'm living under a freeway overpass. I don't care if I die. I am perfectly happy to put death on the table on this one. I don't care. This will be, I will solve this or I will die trying. It sounds a little overdramatic these days, but that was true. That was really, it was just true, and my ability to function had been falling apart for some time, and it's why eventually there came this moment where I literally said, I can't do any of this any longer. Please take the keys. The inner commitment was I have to follow this thread of fear to the absolute bottom. I will dig, and if I die trying, fine. But if there is a bottom, I will dig until it's reached. I don't know if there is a bottom. This whole thing may be fruitless and a fantasy. I don't know, but I cannot not do this. um, there were some things that were sort of specific to me, but I mean, the basic pattern began to be that the more I looked and the more I dug and the more I dug, the more that I would find that things were baseless, and that was sort of a shock. But It was like I would follow one little thread of fear and ask like, well, what is this? Why is it here? Where did it come from? What is it based on? Digging in the thoughts of what the construct of what kept that fear alive, down to the most basic things of the most basic fears that we end up with are survival, is some form or another of fear of death, and fear of abandonment is one of our human brethren's favorite. And of course that makes sense, because abandonment is essentially a fear of death. If you were a good Buddhist, you would have said I was doing self-inquiry. The mode that I chose, because it just suited me, was to write, and so I wrote page after page after page after page after page, digging through these things, and it became sort of time after time after time, like the more the digging would happen, the more the looking would happen, the more the seeing would happen, the more it was sort of like, in shining a light on these things, they would begin to dissipate.
You were peeling the layers.
Yeah, and in a way it was like discovering that simply what I thought was real wasn't as real as I thought, to the point that it was clear that it was literally nothing. And one of the metaphors that has become, has long been one of my sort of favorites, is this metaphor of when the door in the hallway opens and the light from the hallway falls into the darkened room, and what happens to the darkness there? It just is there all of a sudden. There's no way, in any way whatsoever, that light contends with the darkness. It doesn't fight it. In fact, it's shown immediately that there is no such thing even as a particle of darkness. Like, it literally has no mass. There is no particle of darkness. It has no being. It literally has no being. It sort of seems like it's there, but when that light shines on it, it's revealed that there is nothing. And it just is gone. And it was like, in a way you could say it was a process of opening that door into that darkened room 1,000 times in a row.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting way of putting it. Darkness is an absence, and fear, we often think of, well, it's this potent thing in our minds, right? It's a conception of how things will end up,
right?
And how I will end up, and how unfortunate it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound like an absence of something.
It's
concrete,
right?
So
powerful, in fact.
But what is, if we can reconstruct it as an absence, how would you do that? How would you?
That's why direct experience of it is so powerful. Like, because you're so right. One of the things that our minds are brilliant at are coming up with all the ways in which the fear is true.
It's a palpable feeling, right?
It so is. I mean, we have whole nervous systems to light right up like crazy. There is, this seeming form is powerful. It seems that way anyways. It seems powerful. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it's still true.
You can think of it as an absence of something important. And the moment you bring that into your being, it can be like darkness. It dissipates, just like light is brought in.
And it's why they call it enlightenment. It is literally shining the light. And when that darkness is gone, there's light in its place. Things are literally lit up. It's, I mean, That's literally what it means. Awakening. Open the eyes. See the light. See clearly. Why do you see clearly? Because the light is shining on it. So, like, one way we could describe what took place today here was there was a way in which, Marianne, you went inside and shone a very powerful light within. And what it revealed is that all the stuff that seemed to be there, all the things, as that light was shined and shined, you began to, it's almost as though they began to dissipate, and you could see past them, you know, to that sweetness that is the automatic and natural inheritance when it's those things. It's like saying we just looked past the fear. We saw it for what it was, which is a whole bunch of stuff that isn't as solid or doesn't have as much being. It isn't as real as you think or as you've often thought of it. There's more to the story. It's not the only game in town. In fact, the more one looks and looks and looks, the more one discovers it isn't much of a game at all. It's not much of anything.
But if you don't look at it, it can unconsciously or subconsciously grow and grow and grow into something that's really,
It can.
if you look at it,
Yes.
it's not that big.
And it is projected out and seen in a million other forms. You would see it in your past lives. You would see it in your present. You would see it all around you in a million different ways, in threats. You see it in your own body. Oh my God, what about this? What about that? You see it in your bank account. You could see it in a million different forms.